Hello everybody, this is CJ Wiley with more adventures on the road. I have a good one today. Make sure you check out the end of this. I think you'll get a kick out of it because this story is about one of my greatest road partners, JR Weldon Rogers, who I'm going to do a podcast with here in about a week. So stay tuned for that. I'll let everybody know on Facebook, and it'll probably be done this weekend, so it won't be too much longer till I get it out. And that will be really great because Junior is definitely one of the greatest pool hustlers that ever lived. Plus, he was a great player. He was one of the best unknown bar table players. On a given day, he could beat anybody. But his forte was one-handed, especially one-handed jacked up where you can't touch the rail. He was amazing at that game, and he could trap people up. As a matter of fact, that's how we first met, was he trapped me into giving him the, the 6-7 in the break, playing 9-ball on a bar table, and I ended up beating him, but it was because I started pushing out to jump shots. So I figured out a weakness he had and exploited it. And he said that was one of the best things that happened to him, because from that point on, he always matched up where the player couldn't jump balls. Because jumping balls takes a lot out of the game. It really isn't near as good a game and can't be as long as jumping is allowed. But anyway, that's another story for another time. Weldon and I went on the road several times and we'd usually take trips for like 3 or 4 weeks. You know, around a month was about as long as we could do it, and then we'd have to go recuperate. But we would average at least 1,000 a day. That was 500 a piece. And when we had really good trips, we'd average 2,000 a day. And one of those trips is the one I'm going to tell you about, where we went from Indiana down through Kentucky and Tennessee and ended up in North and South Carolina. But one of the main spots we had on the map was Somerset, Kentucky. Now, Somerset produced one of the greatest pool players of all time, Shannon Dalton. Shannon the Cannon. He was in the One Pocket Hall of Fame. He's won major 9-ball tournaments and one pocket tournaments and bank pool tournaments. But at this time, he was only 12 years old, I think, 12 or 13. And you want to talk about a character. He was definitely a character. So Weldon and I went to the pool room that they played in. It was him and his dad. And the information that we had was that Shannon was starting to play better than his dad now, but his dad just couldn't come to terms with it. And his dad was named Gerald. Great guy. Perfect man to gamble with. He was in the car business, because I know he used to take Shannon down to Dallas, Texas, and Shannon played at Rusty's, where I started playing when I was 16, coincidentally enough. So Shannon and I have a lot of similarities in our backgrounds. We know a lot of the same people. We did a podcast together. If you want to look at my YouTube channel and search it, it's a really good one, where I did it's probably about 2 hours with Shannon, talking about pool stories and cutting up a little bit. We'll have to do that again sometime. So we found the pool room and went in, and Weldon was about 20 years older than me. But we looked similar and carried ourselves similarly, so we could get away with him saying he was my uncle. And we told him at Somerset that we were on the road selling computers. And the funny thing about it is, and I can still remember talking about this with him, we didn't really know what a computer was. At that time, they were in the movies, and computers filled up whole rooms and buildings, and, you know, it was on like 007 movies. Because this was the early 80s. This was like 84, I think, or 80, yeah, probably 84. So computers were almost like science fiction at that time. And we're lucky nobody ever asked us anything about computers, because we didn't know anything. And so we went in there, and the first thing we did was Weldon got to talking with Gerald, and Gerald said that he'd let his son play Weldon's nephew, which was me. So we matched up a game. I'm pretty sure we played 6-ball. A lot of times, to throw off the real gamblers, it's good to go in and try to play 6-ball or some kind of game that isn't normally gambled at. And again, it's just throwing people off a little bit. You just want to keep giving them information to keep them kind of guessing. So I played Shannon 6-ball. I think we played for like 20 or 30 a game. I lost 5 or 6 games and quit. So Weldon was over there talking to Gerald, and Weldon had told him that he liked to play one-handed. So they ended up matching up a game where they played one pocket against each other. Gerald played two-handed, Weldon played one-handed, and Gerald gave him 8 balls to 3 balls. So Gerald had to make 8 balls in his corner pocket, and Weldon had to make 3 in his, but Weldon had to play with one duke, as we called it. So, that was hardcore stealing there, because Weldon actually played just about as good as Gerald did two-handed. Weldon playing 1 and Gerald playing 2. Probably not quite, but close. So Weldon went over there and played Gerald till closing time, 8-3, and just edged him out. I think he probably maybe won back the money that I'd lost to Shannon. So that was kind of our strategy, was to lose to Shannon and then beat Gerald. Because again, Gerald didn't play as good as Shannon, and he would bet a lot higher on himself and lose a lot more money. He was a lot more critical of Shannon than he was himself. So we ended up going back and forth, and the next day, Weldon and Gerald played that one pocket game, and they ended up playing like 8-4 and then 8-5. And then they quit again, and I played Shannon one more time and played him 9-ball this time and lost again. So then after losing to Shannon, I played Gerald 9-ball, and I beat him because we raised the bet, and I, of course, started playing a little bit better. Now, Shannon could see something was going on for sure. I mean, he knew. He was a super sharp little kid, and he'd been around a lot of gambling, and we got some great old friends that are no longer with us, Burl Gabbard and some of the classic players from Kentucky, because there was a lot of gambling back then in the 80s in Kentucky and Tennessee and North Carolina. So now the third day is really the day that we're going to take off the big score. So we had everything positioned, and I think Weldon ended up playing Gerald with 8-7 and the break, playing one pocket. So they went from 8-3 in the break to 8-7 and the break. So that's like 4 complete ball adjustments. So needless to say, he'd won probably 5,000 or 6,000 up into that point. So now it was time to to take off the remainder of the score, and that would be me playing Shannon 9-ball. So that's what we did, and Weldon made Gerald bet really high because we had him stuck, and Shannon had beat me twice before, so he was pretty confident. However, I turned up the volume and ended up winning that set, and we took off, I don't know, it was probably close to 10,000 total. And during that course, it was just funny. I heard so many great one-liners. Shannon told one guy, he said, if you play me, you'd be as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. I'll always remember that. That was so funny. But after I beat Shannon, then Gerald played Weldon, and that was the last game, like I said, 8-7 in the break. And by that time, I think they're playing for like maybe 500 a game or something. It was quite a bit, 300, 500. And so Shannon had been gone, and he came back, and he goes in the pool room and marches straight up to his dad. And you got to realize he's 12 years old, and he's just as wild as can be. But also, you could tell he was going to be a super sharp gambler because he already was at that age, and he was learning from some of the best. But he went up to his dad, I'll always remember this, and he said, "Daddy, how you playing?" And Gerald said, "I'm giving him 8-7 in the break." And Shannon looked down and shook his head, and he said, "God damn, Daddy," he says, "if you play them one more time, that man is going to own you, and you're just going to be a fuck duck," he said. That was one of the funniest things I ever saw. This little kid saying, "You're going to be a fuck duck." So we ended up, winning the money, and we always left with an invitation to come back, and they couldn't have been any more professional. I mean, I was really impressed with Shannon's, not only his ability to play, but his ability to gamble, his ability to talk, his ability to understand some of these pretty advanced hustles. And he ended up going down to Morristown, Tennessee a few months later, and we got to know each other pretty well. And I always was a big fan of Shannon. And Baton Rouge, Louisiana, one night he played Flyboy, a big gambling set on the bar table. He was giving up the 7 in the break, and I was betting on the side. I ended up winning $15,000 betting on the side, and they won probably $150,000 in the middle. So that's the type of turnarounds that we were making back then. And again, that one right there was probably in about 97. So, but Shannon and I got to be friends, and I really respect and appreciate him, and his dad was a class act. And it's just cool to reminisce because it wasn't but, let me see, about 10, 12 years later, Shannon and I both played in London, England, on the Moscone Cup team. I was the captain, and we ended up winning the Moscone Cup for the United States and bringing the cup back with the rest of our team. Roger Griffiths, Danny Harriman, Alan Hopkins, Mike Massey. We had an all-star lineup. But I always appreciated, getting to know people kind of the hard way. And there's been a few times where I started out gambling or hustling somebody, and we ended up developing a lot of friendships through that competitiveness, because we did it for a living. Nothing personal. We were just getting the cash. So anyway, till next time, remember, the game is the teacher.